Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with part 35, Ancient Templars, of the Origin of Freemasonry and Knights Templar, by John R. Bennett. Ancient Templars. The conquest of the city furnished a new stimulus to the Pilgrim Age, but Palestine was still in the hands of the fierce Mohammedans, who soon began to carry on their work of pillage and murder of Christian pilgrims with increased vigor. In 1118, two French knights, Hugh de Payens and Geoffrey of St. Omer, perceiving the hardships to which the Christian travelers were exposed in and about the Holy City, took upon themselves the duty of conducting the pilgrims who journeyed between Jerusalem and the Jordan. This charitable office soon gained reputation for the humble warrior guides, and they were joined by 7 others like-minded with themselves. Their names were Royal, Gundamar, Godfrey Bizal, Payan de Matidur, Archibald de Saint-Amen, André de Saint-Malbar, and the Count of Provence. An organization was effected under the benevolent patronage of the Patriarch of the city and under the name of Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ. The members bound themselves by the usual monastic vow of obedience, chastity, and poverty, and to these 2 others were added, to defend the Holy Sepulchre and to protect the wayfaring pilgrims in Palestine. Such was the humble beginning of the Order of Knights Templar. At this time, I deem it best to mention that the old established Order of Knights Hospitallers, who were now in the flush of their heroic victories, lent aid and encouragement to the new society of brothers. Nothing was to be feared by the Knights Hospitallers from a humble fraternity known by the name of Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ. But in years afterwards, jealousy arose and sometimes conflict between the 2 orders. Yet for the most part, they fought side by side for the common cause. Hugh and Geoffrey had but 1 horse between them, and him they rode together on their first mission of benevolence. The Great Seal of the Templars still perpetuates the story of the lowly origin of the order in the figure of the steed with the 2 riders. The first members were given a lodging by Baldwin II, who assigned them quarters in his palace on the site of the ancient temple, whence they derived the name of Templars, a title which they ever afterward retained. The first armory was established in a church nearby, and here they stored their knightly weapons. The first chapter was limited to 9 members, but this limitation was removed by the Council of Troyes in 1127. Renard says that Baldwin sent Hugh de Payens to Europe to solicit a new crusade, and that while there he presented his companions to the Pope Honorius II, from whom he craved permission to form a religious military order, in imitation of that of the Hospitallers. The pontiff referred them to the ecclesiastical council which was then in session at Troyes in Champagne. Thither de Payens repaired and represented to the fathers the vocation of himself and his companions as defenders of the pilgrim. The enterprise was approved, and Saint Bernard, abbot of Clairvaux, was commissioned to draw up a suitable code for the government of the body and to devise an appropriate garb. The dress chosen was in strong contrast with that of the Knights Hospitallers, consisting of a white tunic and mantle, with a red cross on the left breast, while the Knights Hospitallers wore the plain black robe, bearing a white cross of 8 points on the left breast. The rule of conduct and discipline was approved in 1128 by Pope Honorius II. The principal articles were these. The knights were bound to recite vocal prayers at certain hours, to abstain from meats 4 days in the week, to refrain from hunting and hawking, to defend with their lives the mysteries of the Christian faith, to observe and maintain the 7 sacraments of the Church, the 14 articles of faith, the creeds of the apostles and of Athanasius, to uphold the doctrines of the two testaments, including the interpretations of the fathers, the unity of God and the trinity of his person, and the virginity of Mary, both before and after the birth of the Son, to go beyond the seas when called to do so in defense of the cause, to fly not from the foe unless assailed by more than 3 infidels at once. Hugh de Payan thus provided with a rule that gave permanence to his order, and encouraged by the approval of the church, returned to Jerusalem. Humility was one of the first principles of the membership. The helmet of the Templar should have no crest, his beard should not be cut, his demeanor should be that of servant of his fellows. Each member, on assuming the garb of a knight, must be girt with a linen cord in token that he was henceforth bound to serve. The primal object sought in the institution of the order was the succor of needy pilgrims, but as the Moslems recovered after the capture of Jerusalem, and in increasing numbers, threatened the Christians on every side, the organization from necessity assumed a more distinctively military character and ultimately became the right arm of the Christian armies in their several operations against the foe. Saint Bernard, who visited them in their temple retreat, speaks in the warmest terms of their self-denial, their frugality, their modesty, their piety, and their bravery. Their banner was the Boussillon of divided white and black, indicative of peace to their friends, but destruction to their foes. The organization of the Templars embraced 4 classes of members: knights, squires, servitors, and priests. Each had their particular duties and obligations. The presiding office of the order was called the Master, afterwards the Grand Master. England, Germany, France, and Italy, in fact nearly all the states of Christendom, were divided into provinces, and over each was sat a provincial master. The Grand Master of Jerusalem was regarded as the head of the entire brotherhood, which soon grew in numbers, influence, and wealth to be one of the most powerful organizations in the world. Counts, dukes, priests, and even kings eagerly sought the honor which was everywhere conceded to the red cross and white mantle of the Templar. In course of time, the Knights of the Temple became a sovereign body, owing no allegiance to any secular potentate. In spiritual matters, the Pope was still regarded as supreme, but in all other affairs, the Grand Master was independent as the greatest sovereign of Europe. The houses of the knights could not be invaded by any civil officer. Their churches and cemeteries were exempt from interdictions, their properties and revenues from taxation. So great were the immunities thus enjoyed that thousands of persons sought to be affiliated with the Brotherhood in order to share its benefits. To the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers was largely due whatever success or glory the subsequent crusades achieved, of which there were 7. They were the flower of the armies, always in the van with the glittering swords and waving banners, when duty called, and whether defending moated castle or mountain defiles. They fought with thoughtless heroism which makes even the sword almost an object of reverence. When the Christian kingdom in the east tottered to its downfall, the Templars attempted to secure their own interest by separate treaties with the Moslems, but their fortunes were involved with those of the Western power, and all went down together. The chief seat of the Templars remained at Jerusalem from the foundation in 1118 until 1187, when Saladin, Sultan of Egypt, invaded Palestine and in October of that year captured Jerusalem. It was transferred to Antioch, which fell to the Christians in 1098 during the First Crusade. It was there that the followers of Christ first took the name of Christians. It was there that St. Peter was made first bishop of the church, and there the early saints and martyrs performed their miracles that gave to the city a sanctity second only to that of Jerusalem. The headquarters of the Grand Master remained at Antioch for 4 years, and was then removed in 1191 to Acre. This city was first taken by Baldwin I in 1100, recaptured by the Moslems under Saladin in 1187, and again retaken in 1191 by Richard Coeur de Lion, leader of the Third Crusade. It was estimated that at this siege, the Christian losers reached the enormous aggregate of 300,000 men, while those of the Muslims were but little inferior. In all the great struggles of humanity, so terrible a waste of life was never witnessed as before the walls of Acre. It became the stronghold of knighthood and continued to be the headquarters of the order until 1217, when a third removal was made to the Pilgrims' castle near Caesarea, a city founded by Herod the Great in 22 BC and built in honor of Caesar. It was situated northwest of Jerusalem on the Mediterranean and north of Jaffa, but now lies in shapeless ruins. In 1291, the city of Acre again fell into the hands of the Muslims under Sultan Qati of Cairo, and with the subsequent overthrow of the Christian kingdom, the Templars retired to the island of Cyprus, which was captured in 1191 by Richard Coeur de Lion during the Third Crusade, and to whom they paid 35,000 marks. Many of the Templars, after a brief stay in the island of Cyprus, retired to their different preceptories in Europe. A brief description of the defense and fall of Acre can only be compared with the many accounts of their past glorious struggles with the infidel in defense of the Holy Land, and of Christian pilgrimage, sometimes successful and often disastrous, of arid sands well moistened with the blood of Christian and Saracen warriors, of final forced departure from the place which its prowess had conquered, but which it had not the strength to hold. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.